Well, hey, this is Dr. Rhonda Simmons, and welcome to another edition of Empowered Heart to Heart, where you will always hear messages of hope and interviews that empower and conversations that heal. I am so glad that today is no exception. I have a wonderful guest, and I always like to say that I have met some of the best people this side of heaven, and today is no exception. I am super excited because today I'll be interviewing Sharon McCaskill, who is a registered dietitian nutritionist. She's an entrepreneur. She's a pastor's wife who balances marriage, ministry, and business. I'm excited about that because that's what I do too. And she is the founder of Sharon McCaskill Nutrition and her food blog, The Helpful GF. And for those of you who are not like me who have this issue, GF stands for gluten free. Now, if everyone else in the world knew that besides me, okay, I'll just take that one. But I'm so excited about her blog and about her practice. And she helps individuals and families improve their gut health, embrace intuitive eating, and create balanced family nutrition. This is so important. No matter what you do, you're going to do it in the body that you have. And so you might as well have a healthy body and a healthy nutritional practice in place. Sharon's journey into private practice was inspired by her husband's celiac disease and type 1 diabetes, leading her to pursue her passion for helping others through personalized nutrition. I love that. Hello, Sharon. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh my goodness, you are just an extraordinary woman in that you saw an issue that needed to be addressed and you figured you had what it takes to do it. And so I'm excited. What made you take the route to start the blog?
That's a great question. So I started that back in 2018. My husband had just gone through a bunch of health issues. So I mean, celiac and type 1 diabetes never go away. He'll have them for life. But he got really, really, really sick to the point that he was in and out of the hospital for over a year. And he ended up being hospitalized for 8 weeks in Boston, which we just talked. I'm in New York. So it was like 4 hours away from where I lived. So when he came out of that, and I just saw how influential nutrition support from his dietitians, as well as the medical care from his doctors, kind of impacted him, I felt like wanted to help others, right? So I started putting recipes online and just started sharing tips and things that we had learned through this journey with others. So that's how I started my website.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. So your whole practice and your blog really started from a place of love. That is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And really just kind of overcoming, right? So like we have this idea in ministry that I talk about a lot where it's like finding your joy, like even in all the hard times, there's these like glimpses of joy. And I just saw how like coming out of that experience, people would like come up to me at church or somewhere else that they knew me and they'd be like, "Hey, I just found out this person has to go gluten free. Can you talk to them?" I was like, sure, but I'm not like a doctor or anything. I don't know, right? And a few years after having the blog, my husband was like, I don't know. I was just feeling discontent in life and kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my husband was like, you could start over. Like you can do whatever, right? And so at that point I went back to school to become a dietitian. He's like, you could do this for real if you wanted to.
Wow, that
So,
is amazing. Well, what were
yeah.
you doing before you became a dietitian?
I was a college professor.
Oh, so you are Dr.
Yeah.
McCaskill.
No, just a master's degree. So, but still
Okay.
working as a professor. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. That is wonderful.
Mhm.
So, um, what is so bad about gluten?
So the general answer is nothing. So for the average person, nothing. Nothing's wrong with it. But for people with celiac disease, eating gluten triggers an autoimmune response in their body that basically leads it to attack itself and stop it from absorbing any food at all. So if somebody has celiac disease, consuming gluten can cause I mean, there's over 160 different symptoms, but all kinds of difficulties, including malnutrition at the most extreme.
Wow, that is scary, actually. And does the is a diagnosis hard to come by? Because they have to rule out so many other things.
Yeah, so celiac is actually pretty common in the US. 1 in 133 people have it. And that diagnosis is increasing as the years go on, as doctors get better at diagnosing and they're screening for it more. But it is complicated to get that diagnosis. They're usually ruling out other conditions. They may find it in a blood test, but it does require an endoscopy typically for full diagnosis. So, I mean, you can imagine as a parent with a young child, you might be resistant to do a colonoscopy. As an adult who has a lot of things in your plate, a colonoscopy may just not fit into your timeline of what you're comfortable doing, people that have insurance issues, right? All this type of stuff. It can be fairly difficult.
Wow. So, how has your role as a dietitian overlapped with ministry, or is it a part of your ministry now at your church?
Yeah, so I do look at my nutrition counseling as a dietitian as kind of part of my ministry in general, right? Helping people, you know, be healthy and take care of their temple, as well as just being able to alleviate some of that stress in their life, their indecision, they're not knowing what to do, their feelings of overwhelm, right? Like kind of taking that burden off of them to do all the research and do everything themselves. Like I really love to come alongside and support my clients in that way. Um, and I don't know if being a dietitian has directly affected my role as a pastor's wife in our church itself, but part of the reason why I took this journey and this career path was to own my own business, right? Be able to schedule client appointments around our schedule with my husband, with my kids, and I practice virtually. So I see clients in a few different states. And I really wanted that because when my husband gets called, I want to be able to get up and go without being tied down to this like brick and mortar job that then becomes a question of like, well, what do we do about your job? How do we handle your career in this? Like, I now have this thing that's flexible. And if God says, get up and go, we can get up and go, right? And just move it with us.
That's fantastic. We have very similar practices. I'm not in the health profession, and I am in the coaching profession, specifically with pastors' wives. And so, um, your application just resonated with me because I was wondering, how are you handling all of this? And you just explained that beautifully. And so, how did you feel going from your college professor security of a job to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think really. So when I first started my website, I just kind of did that for fun, a couple hours a week, right? That didn't interfere with my job at all. But when I left my job and became a dietitian, it just was very clear. I was kind of feeling for a while like I was being led to something else, anyways. And when I found out, like, one of the few programs to become a registered dietitian was at a college 20 minutes away from my house, right? And we started kind of looking at all of that. And I was like, I never even really studied science in school. I was very much a like liberal arts type major, right? I studied human services, some counseling, like the science stuff that you had to do to become a dietitian was just not in my history. And so I was like, well, I'll apply for this program, but I don't know if I'll even get in because I don't have all these prereqs, right?
Mhm.
And when I got in, it was just kind of eye opening. It's like, well, I don't, none of this is coincidence, right? Like it's all very clear. I'm feeling like I need to leave. I have these other things lining up. I got into this program that was difficult to get into. Like it all just lined up so clearly for me. Um, I don't know. I think it just like fit, right? It just felt like everything fit together. And I think that that's often what happens when we follow the calling of God, right? Like when something feels really off in that, I think we kind of have to sit back and be like, am I still doing what God is calling me to do? Like I know he called me here, but right? Am I now being called elsewhere? And that's a lot of what I walked through.
I tell you, you have just preached the whole sermon because sometimes we struggle with the fact that God operates in seasons. And we're just as human beings, some of us may be resistant to change, and or if you're like me, I thrive off of structure. I like knowing every step of the plan from A to Z and all of the things in between. And you and I both know that's not faith.
Right.
That is not faith. So you left your job, and did you go to school while you were still the college professor?
No, it actually lined up really well. One of the things that I felt very discontent with in general, just in my family life, was when my oldest was young, I was only working part-time. So I was with her a lot, right, while raising her. But my youngest was born while my husband was really sick, and I just felt like she did not get a lot of attention from me. And then by the time he was better, right, and I could actually focus more on family, not just him and his needs, I was then working full time, right? He was sick and he wasn't able to work and provide. So I was working full time. And it just kind of lined up perfectly that that 1 year that I could do some community college classes to fix some of those prerequisites, right, was her last year before kindergarten. And it just really lined up so perfectly that, like, oh, I can stay home with her 3 days a week and just take these community college classes, these other two. It just fit really perfectly to be able to do that. And then the little things that God knows that we didn't, right? That was 2019 through 2020. So COVID would change everything, anyways, right? And it just worked so perfectly that I was home. I was able to help my first grader with schooling. I was able to help my husband as we shifted a lot of ministry stuff going virtual, right? During that time, during lockdowns, um, all of that type of stuff, right? Like, I just think it was this very clear picture to me that God was like, I know what you need to do here.
Wow, that is amazing. We have so much in common because I just resigned from my job as a school principal almost 3 weeks ago. Tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow will be 3 weeks ago. And like you, I knew it was time to go. But man, I tell you, that day hitting send on my notice of resignation, oh my goodness, I stayed at work probably until like 7 o'clock that night. And then I finally hit send. And I'm like, okay, got to do it, hit send, because I knew if I kept deliberating, it just wasn't going to
Yeah.
get done. But oh, I'm so glad I did. So glad. So, what's next for your practice?
Yeah, so my private practice, I actually just launched this year. So it's only been going for a few months now. So that's really what's going on, is just hoping to see more clients and work with them one on one and really just, give them more hope, more help in those areas. I don't know about where you live, but I know where I live, like, getting medical care can be really difficult, right? Like, a lot of specialists have very long wait lists. Like, I know my niece needed to see a GI earlier this year, and it was like, here in 5 months you can see someone, right? Like, so I'm really hoping to help bridge that gap for some people and just give them some support while they're waiting or while they're trying to figure out. And you said something earlier that really resonated with me, right? Like, we try to have everything all planned out, and I think that's one thing that I discovered as a dietitian is so fun because, like, I do a lot of the coaching, right, and the counseling, like goal setting and stuff like that. But then I get to turn around and like make these people a meal plan and like schedule all this stuff, right? And like make them a shopping list. And I love that. Like, that's so fun to me. It's just like, it's like, oh, these are the things that I love doing, right?
Well, that's wonderful. You should see your face right now. You are so illuminated. You can tell that you are walking in your passion and your purpose, and that's wonderful. So tell us about Effortless Eats. I believe that's what you called it, Effortless. Eats. It's an email series you said about wholesome
Oh,
gluten.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So sorry. I'm like, I was still thinking about meal planning and I was like, yes, no. So on my private practice site, I do have a free meal plan that gets delivered over email. It's an email series called Effortless Eats. And that just delivers each day a different recipe. And these are like such simple recipes that are also healthy. I think a lot of times we overthink healthy and we think like, or we do the opposite and think like, all I'll be able to eat is kale, right? Like, no, God did not create anybody to live off of kale, right? No, He created lots of good food. So,
Yes.
yeah, I love these recipes because they are super simple, super easy, do not take 50 ingredients, right? And it'll just get a healthy meal on the table. Yes.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. So here's a question. I have found that for some reason it costs more to eat healthy than it does to eat the food that'll kill you. And so is that true in the gluten-free world too?
In the gluten-free world, yes. So studies, there hasn't been a super recent study, but studies from like 2020 or 2019, like a few years ago, right? Inflation now, food is even more, like way more than that. But back then, is that gluten-free food was over 160% more expensive than its conventional counterpart. So, right, like regular bread, gluten-free bread, regular cookies, gluten-free cookies, right? So gluten-free specialty food definitely has a higher price tag. And I'll just say that in general. Specialty food, things that we often think as health food, always have a higher price tag than their conventional counterpart, right?
Mhm.
But I think especially something that I've been noticing recently, even with this inflation, is that a lot of the things that are ending up costing a lot more are those processed foods, those things like cereal, right? Like we're getting to the point now where when my kids are picking out stuff at the grocery store, I'm like, cereal is very expensive. This is not any longer like a cheaper breakfast option, really, than me making you a smoothie out of bananas and some other fruit, right? Like
Right.
it's actually some of those processed foods are getting very pricey. But like I said, I think a lot of times we overthink it. You do not need to buy expensive greens powder to eat healthy, right? Fruits and vegetables do not cost that much more than they cost 2 or 3 years ago, right? And there's a lot of health there, right? Like fruits and vegetables, some of the healthiest things, but also when we think about what do we eat when we're on a budget, right? We think about things like rice, we think about things like beans, we think about frozen vegetables, canned vegetables. Like there is still nutrition in frozen and canned food. There's a ton of nutrition in beans. There's good fiber in things like brown rice. There's a lot of vitamins in potatoes, right? All of these things that are very affordable. So I think it's important to remember and kind of go back to those basics and stop overthinking a lot of that stuff.
Yes.
We don't
Yes.
need expensive greens powder to be healthy.
Well, that is good to know. Absolutely good to know. You know, Sharon, it has been so amazing talking to you. I don't have too many nutritionists on my show. And so I think that this interview is so unique because we never really stop to think about the fact that our bodies, which are the temple of the living God, you know, affect everything that we do. We take them everywhere. They're a part of our life. They are us, you know. And so if we don't take care of our bodies, we're not good to anyone or anything, no matter what our roles are in life and what we do. And so I appreciate that you are available globally. Since you said your services are virtual, you are available globally. What is your website, or how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so as you said earlier, my food blog is The Helpful GF, and that has a bunch of recipes, tips, products, that type of stuff on there. But my private practice is mccaskillnutrition.com. So my last name, nutrition.com.
Okay, and the McCaskill Nutrition is all one word.
Yes.
Okay. So hopefully I spelled everything correctly, and we shall see in just a minute. How'd I do?
Yes.
All righty. And so I will put these in the show notes as well.
Great.
If you are looking for some gluten-free coaching, some nutrition coaching and advice, and some recipes, go to the website, make sure you sign up, get on that email series so that you can get those daily recipes and take care of your health. That is so important. I appreciate you being on the show today. Any final words of encouragement or instruction, Sharon?
No, but thank you so much for having me. It's been great to talk with you.
Absolutely. And if you'll hang out just for a minute, I'll close out the show and be right back with you, okay?
Great.
Oh my goodness, that was such an inspiring interview. And taking care of the bodies that God has given us. You know, I believe there is a scripture that says that my prayer is that you be in good health and that you prosper, even as your soul prospers. And so, yes, we're all about, Christianity and having a relationship with Jesus. We're all about that. Don't get it twisted. However, you can have a much more thriving relationship when you feel better. And so God wants us to take care of our bodies. He wants us to make that a priority so that we can bring our best selves to our marriages, our ministries, our careers, whatever God has assigned to our hands to do, we can bring our best selves to the table when we take care of our bodies. So make sure that you reach out. If you have a gluten issue going on, reach out to Sharon McCaskill. Her website is on the screen or in the description below the video or the podcast, www.mccaskillnutrition.com. And reach out to her because I truly believe that she can help you and that God has her in position for such a time as this. So until the next time, be blessed, be encouraged, but most of all, be empowered. And I'll see you on the next edition of Empowered Heart to Heart.